A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to each one of you. My name is Malini Thirumalayanandan Pillai. I head the life sciences business for UK at Virtusa, and I'm extremely delighted to be your host for today's session. Before we begin this session, I'd like to cover 2 points for hygiene. This is a 1 hour session, inclusive of the question and the answer section. Two, I request you to post your questions or the comments in the chat box, and our panelists will address them towards the end of the fireside chat. Thank you. Let me set the context for you all. I come from Chennai, the Detroit of India. A woman pursuing engineering in tech was a rarity. In my engineering class, only 20% were girls. As I've worked my way into and upwards in the tech sector, there has always been a niggling awareness of the shortage of women role models in the tech sector. As someone in this, I'm also very aware of how society doesn't fully comprehend the impact of women in tech. And when attempted, they are always underestimated. Women make up 50% of the world population, but only hold 15% of the roles in engineering. Women's representation in tech force across geographies aren't much better. 27% in the US, 31% in the UK, and 34% in India. In fact, the gender gap for women in technology as a whole is actually worse than it was in 1984. True. Let's look at the women capital inflow into the sector. At the entry level, there is a high gender ratio. But as you progress to the higher levels of the leadership journey, the gap widens and the numbers are disheartening. And such gap is the topic of our conversation with our esteemed panelists today. Appropriately, today's theme for our fireside chat is why equity in tech won't happen unless we engineer it. We're joined by female tech leaders who will share their experiences and observations on navigating and succeeding in an ever evolving landscape. We are gathered to raise awareness about the shortage of women role models in tech. This is a major barrier that begins at the university, higher education level, and continues to work into the workplace. We will lean into the experiences of the tech leaders, joining us to understand why and how this focus on gender equity needs to be a part of every society's DNA. In short, we're here to become aware of the role we'll have to play to embrace equity. We have with us today a stellar selection of panelists, and I'm super excited to hear their observations on navigating the equity gap and leading at the level of our career. These open and honest reflections will lead to discovering valuable insights that will give us a momentum to move forward as a tribe. On that note, I'm super delighted to introduce our panelists today. The first panelist is Meenakshi Iyer. She is the Managing Director, Digital Client Enablement Technology, Head of GBS Bangalore Tech Center at Standard Chartered Bank, is also a DNI Council Chair, GBS India. She's an experienced technology leader with demonstrated history of working in the banking industry. She's a leader in cloud transformation for banking application and digital customer journeys and leads the product engineering solutions delivery and heads the global applications. She's passionate about DNI and chair of DNI Council at Standard Chartered GBS India. The next panelist is Geeta Chaudhary. She's a head of the professional services for APAC and Japan at the Amazon Web Services, responsible for providing advisory and expert services to customers in the technical and the functional aspects of transitioning to a cloud based IT model. Before joining AWS, Geeta held leadership positions in Ericsson as Global Head of Digital Services Transformation Center and Head of North America IT and Cloud Professional Services, where she was responsible for driving the company's IT and cloud services portfolio. And prior to that, Ericsson, Geeta has served for 20 years in multiple senior executive and leadership roles in Nokia, Reliance, AT&T, and as an entrepreneur in media and entertainment, spanning sales, business development, strategy, mergers and acquisitions, service delivery, and operations. The third panelist for today is Parvatam Subaya. She's a delivery and the transformation leader of R&D IT at AstraZeneca. As a leader with global delivery experience, with focus on delivery transformation, digital transformation, and enterprise change strategy and enablement, she is accountable for value driven delivery, delivery excellence, defining newer operations models, and relevant processes, committed to efficiencies with proven outcomes in the life sciences segment. The last panelist, and not the least, is Shubha Krishnamurthy. She is the director and for the data strategy and operations team within development, digital, and tech team in GSK, which drives the data and analytics platforms, solutions, and products on clinical trial operations. She is currently representing R&D digital and tech in India GCC and will be responsible to land R&D digital and tech vision in India teams and bring synergies between R&D business and tech teams to build a thriving team in India. An engineer at heart, she brings high standards of leadership with purpose driven passion and high performance, customer focused with agility to bring better future for our consumers every day. Finally, I'm extremely proud to have our own role model from Virtusa, Shilpa Kulatkar, who heads Virtusa's corporate FP&A group, reporting to the CFO. She is CA and CPA with 21 years of experience in diverse industries like ITES, banking, BPO. She takes pride to be a long-time Virtusian with 14 years stint encompassing different roles from G&A, cost management, business finance, corporate P&L management and management reporting, finance processes, tech transformations, and so on. As a mother of two, Shilpa looks at passion, commitment, and continuous learning as the key to professional success and personal gratification. After all of those starry introductions, let's begin. So, Geeta, just on the topic of journeys, what inspired you to pursue engineering and what were the milestones in your career?
Yeah, thank you, Malini. I'm super excited to be here. Happy International Women's Day to all. It's an interesting question because I actually am not from engineering background. So I've adopted tech as I've evolved in my journey. And so I started off with a master's in psychology and then did my MBA in the US with information systems. So tech landing for me was a very soft landing as I started my career with telecom. Gradually, I got really interested in tech. I did a rotation from Bell Labs, which is the research arm of AT&T. Super, super technical, like super PhDs that came from a very heavy technical background. So I think I learned from the best. A little bit of an anomaly from some of the other esteemed panelists over here that my starting point was not tech. But as I evolved, I got really interested in technology. I think I worked with Bell Labs on internet in the early days in 1997, 98 timeframes. And from there, I had the opportunity to actually start a tech company in India, which was funded by ICICI Ventures. And I sold that in 2004. And that got me really deep into tech. But I think I operate best at the intersection of business and tech. So I understand tech, but I also, most of my roles have been either P&L roles or business oriented roles. I sold the company in 2004, and that was another pivotal point in my career when then I was hired by Reliance Communications. I was entering into CDMA technologies in India. I worked with them. But over the last 10 years, I've held positions in telecom and media. So I was the media business unit lead for Ericsson and then started the same telecom and media group at AWS 4 years ago and then moved to Asia Pac now in similar stuff. So I think the experience or the learning I have is that technology can be a choice as well. And don't be disheartened if you haven't started with an engineering background. There's always an advantage there. But with interest, you can pick it up. And it always, for me, it helped. Technology helped me a lot. But the understanding of the business environment also was very critical for my career journey.
Wow, that's really inspiring, Geeta. Thank you for sharing that journey. I think it's super important. So, Shilpa, coming to you, what was pursuing a career in a tech company like for you, right? Your background is very different. Tell us about your professional journey.
Well, before settling in the tech sector, Malini, I had my stints in banking and BPO for a few years. Um, Although I'm not from an engineering background, but in finance we also kind of do a little bit of engineering, problem solving, right? So it's a topic which is close to me. And as a finance professional working in the tech industry for last 14, 15 years, what I've witnessed is the transformation that the industry has gone through. And I'm privileged, I would say, to have seen that in terms of the technologies, the way delivery models have evolved over the period, supply chain dynamics, employee demographics, everything. And now from a finance standpoint, right, we in finance are also forced to forced, or we have loved, depends on which side of the
Mm,
table you are sitting. But finance itself as a function has gone through this transformation all because of the technological advancements, right? And we have witnessed that we have either embraced the technology and adapted and changed the finance operations in line with that. And it's a great journey, uh, and get to be part of that journey too. um, Having said that, in terms of my 2 cents on my professional journey, because that's what you have asked me, as a woman, working last 22 odd years in corporate life, what I've learned is, come what may, people are going to judge you. So be yourself and be self-driven, right? Nobody else is going to do that for you. You have to have the passion, and if you have aspirations at work, speak up, do things to make that happen, right? If you need to learn, go ahead and learn and ask for that position if it's not coming your way. So that's one. Second, I would say there is nothing like a work-life balance,
mm,
right?
mm,
It's a work-life prioritization. There will be always days at office which are too demanding. There will be days at work which are too demanding. You just have to, go with the flow, right? Don't get into the guilt trip that, okay, I missed something on the home front today because there are things at office that are expecting. But if you look at it, the whole journey as a professional journey, from an aspect of, it's a long haul, right?
mm.
So it's important that it's not a destination you're trying to reach, it's the experience, and your happiness in that experience is what matters actually. And to be able to enjoy that journey and the companions that you have along the way, you got to have your support system, right? And lean on them, ask for help when you need it. And for me, I mean, I've been extremely lucky. I have great mentors, great managers. My team, I mean, I have a my team is equally tenured as I am. So we know each other very well. We bank on each other. We fill in for each other in situations where it demands. And I would like to mention that, the even the male leaders I've worked with, it has been really great that I never felt that differentiation. Right, it's part of the team. I mean, you don't want to get treated specially because you're a woman in the flock, right? So that was something that's really great about Virtusa. And my thanks to my current CFO Amit Bajoria, my Chief People Officer Sundar, who are making that environment happen at Virtusa, and all the other women colleagues. So it's been great ride so far.
Thanks, Shilpa. Can't agree, more, on those aspects, and it's very interesting. Very quickly, moving over to Minakshi. We heard Geeta kind of, saying you can, pursue tech at any point in time, and Shilpa saying, well, you can actually figure out multiple different, domains in within the tech. At what point in time do you did you know that you really wanted a career in engineering? How have those choices kind of played out for you?
Very interesting question, Malini, and that really takes me to down a memory lane, right? And it's how my upbringing has been. I was brought up in the suburbs of Mumbai, which is an extremely culturally diverse society, right? And a very happening place. It also had women who were traditionally homemakers, but also had a set of women who would, pack up very early in the morning, head to the local trains, go to work, and come back. what I observed during that time in my upbringing is a high degree of inequality in most of our households, where women traditionally did a few things. Like my mom would always be in the kitchen and run around doing things, while my dad used to be going to the office, but he would never do any of the homework, right? There was an expectation that I would help my mom, but my brother wasn't expected to do that. And I saw that a very uniform thing happening across various different households.
Mm. Mm.
I also observed how the working women in Mumbai would, finish all their housework at 4 a.m. in the morning, rush and get ready and go to work. When they come back, they're preparing for their kitchen and so on and so forth. That's when I kind of became a bit of a rebellious thing, saying I'm not going to be in a traditional role of what the society is telling me to be. This is not acceptable to me. I would want to challenge, and my rebellious nature at that time, maybe it was teenage hormones or whatever you call it. I wanted to, do something that most women were not getting into. I also thought about that as I become ambitious and I do pick up engineering as the career to be in, also set up saying I'm not going to do, be that superwoman with 10 hands, taking care of everything around, right? So it was a life that I was having a plan about how to go around that thing. But of course, the rebellious nature in me saying no, I'm going to pick up something that's not traditionally done by most of the people around me. The girls in my classes were not ready to take up STEM. They were not. They were wanting to do something easy because that's how the family and the society were conditioning them to, right? And that was not acceptable to me. And I think that's how I made up my mind saying engineering. And it started pretty early in college. I think I also had an aptitude because I would tinker around things at home.
Mm.
uh, Even a screwdriver, I would just go open anything that's around. So it was just not about, hey, I don't like how the society is treating, but it was also about something that triggered my inquisitiveness and using tools around, that kind of pushed me saying, yeah, I think that's something that I do want to do. And I ended up doing chemical engineering. Right now I'm in the software IT, but I chose that because there wouldn't be any women there, and I thought, why not? Why couldn't we do that? So that's how I chose that, and I remain in the field. Of course, a move from one field to the other, but that seems to be the core of what I do today.
Wow, wow. Thanks for sharing that, Meenakshi. I think the thread is very common, right? Don't settle, bring in dash of curiosity, with ambition and passion, and just keep going. And I think, that's what you're all sharing that. So I'm going to very quickly go to Parvatam. Parvatam, what encouraged you to forge a path in the technology industry? And you're in one of the most beautiful industry, right? Which where you can see the purpose, right there in front of your eyes. So, what really encouraged you to forge a path in technology industry?
Sure. Firstly, thank you, Mali. Pleasure being here, and happy Women's Day, everyone. The response to that question is going to be a little intrinsic and personal to start with. So I belong to what we typify as the Gen X cohort, right? And in my growing years, I've always been fascinated by technology, right? Be it, airplanes that are lifting off the ground effortlessly, or the mechanics of a clock, or, the evolution of technologies that we've seen, right? Be it the televisions and, how they changed form and, shape over the years, or the very many stories that I've heard from my father who used to travel a lot. There's a lot of things that got me curious and also innately inspired, looking at my dad
Mm.
fixing things at home, right? Small to large, when they broke down, or coming up with newer solutions. So it was but natural for me to pursue something with all of this going on and the curiosity in me. It was but natural for me to pursue something in the engineering or technology field. Although I would admit that landing in IT was very incidental, not necessarily planned. It was incidental, but then once I was in, no looking back. And it's just been an amazing journey all these years, just rich with, opportunities and experiences, and most importantly, learnings.
Thanks, Parvitam, and well, very beautifully said, right? I think a lot of influence is also back, from the surrounding, right? Be it your, father or the people that you're surrounding, and there is a lot of influence that comes in, and that's something that we want to be addressing, today, right? That we need to be more embracing this equity. Um, Coming to Shubha, I think you've had the most time to reflect on the journey as the others were sharing. What drew you to the career in tech, and what has been your journey like, Shubha?
Yeah, thanks, Malini, for first of all, I think arranging for this event, which is giving us an opportunity to meet so many fabulous women in technology. And I wish you all, happy Women's Day. Looking forward for, I think, Power Packed hour where we will, exchange more thoughts and then at least try to inspire some more women into the technology. That's what I'm hoping, this session will lead to. Coming back to my background, I come from a very small town in India and a middle class family. And I have seen my parents, kind of, my father was always, he never treated me like, a girl child. He always gave me an opportunity to explore as equally as he would give, opportunity for my brother to do it. Right. So that is the kind of attitude and the environment that was provided to me, and so I was open to explore anything I wanted to do it. That was one part of it. Secondly, I think I would give most of my credit to my mother as well. She is one woman I have seen who is like, I would consider her to be like a superwoman, doing a lot of things, working at home, managing her balance, but of course a lot of compromises done in order to look for the family commitments, etc. But even with all of those, I saw her uh, getting into, venturing into the areas that she would have never done. She was the first woman who started riding bike into in the small town, and many more women followed her, and that actually came to me as well. And when I started my college in the small town, I started to ride the bicycle first, and I became the first girl to start riding the bicycle in the small town, going for 6 kilometers and all of that, right? So those were, I think, some of the inspirations which I carry from my upbringing, which actually made me look beyond what is given to you, and then aspire for more, have higher ambitions. But of course, getting into technology was, I would say, was a easy path for all of us during those days. I come from engineering of 98 batch, and at those days we had only two options: either you do engineering or you do medicine, right? I mean, these days we have so many other options. But so it was easy for me to pick up the engineering track because I was literally scared of getting into medicine for many other reasons. So that was an easy path for me to get in. But of course, once you start getting into the job, and I think that is where you start really learning about what the technology is, and then how you are able to make the difference to your teams, your organization, your society. So I played multiple technical roles, and I think there was no looking back once I was into the IT industry. Worked in many of the consultings, providers and service providers, and the previously I worked in captive for Unilever. That was for almost 8 years, and now I'm part of GSK. I'm totally passionate about data, and all through my career, I've been working on data and analytics, and that is something that gives me a kick all the time to kind of, analyze the data and then bring some insights, which kind of, helps the organization. And one thing which I wanted to add, I think, when I heard many of the panels here, some of them are non-techie, but they are into technology world, finance coming into technology. So when I joined GSK, I saw science coming closer to technology, right? So that's what I felt. And I always used to feel medicine job, when people are in medical profession, that is the noble job. We all consider all our medical professionals to be very noble. But I started feeling that, technology also has a noble role to play when it comes and, works closer with science, and then you are able to add to the society and bring that impact which you can immediately see. right? And so many consumers of medical outcomes. So that's about it. I'm passionate about data much more than what I was earlier, because now I know the importance of technology and the data that it can, combine with science and then, make difference to the society.
Absolutely. Well said, Shubha. Data is the new oil, and tech touches our lives, right? Well, what a beginning, right? Each one in its own special way. Thank you, panelists. Extremely happy to have you on board. And we will move forward, with the next set of questions into the next, discussion topic. So, Meenakshi, I'm going to come back to you. What role do women play in creating more equity in tech?
It's a very important question. Typically, the question is usually about what role men play in bringing in equity, but interesting to see how women do that. The common answer across, and there are two sets of thoughts that I have here, right? The common answer is, of course, women in tech, they by themselves being there are role models.
Hmm.
And you do need, entrant level into an organization to have a sense of who can they closely look up to. So the role modeling, of course, is the first answer. How women are growing in their careers is also an inspiration to other women, right? Which is why we always talk about paying it forward for the people coming after us, and that's very essential to bring in that equity. Again, because we're talking about women bringing equity, it is also about women being more empathetic towards their own gender about what others are going through. There is a huge difference between what we call as equality versus equity, right? And that's the theme of IWD this year.
Yeah.
On everyone doesn't start at the same line.
Yeah.
We have very different circumstances, and I think that's more known by women on what those differences are in equity, right? I wouldn't say men do not know, but we recognize that much more quickly on what each of our people might be starting at. So the recognition or the empathetic factor is much more there. That's the first piece of being role model, understanding what equity is. Now, especially in the tech world, I would say we need more women to be there as technologists and as engineers, because we are fast moving into what we call as the AI world, the automation world,
Mhm.
and a very data centric driven digital world. Um, we're also hearing a lot of these unconscious or things that is being built by machines as such. And that happens when you do not have a diverse workforce really building that or engineering it. So the second aspect is, by just being there, women are actually bringing in equity or fairness in how our machines work as well, which eventually then turn out to be beneficial for the gender.
Mhm.
So those are really the two parts that I wanted to bring about. One is being there, being the role model, paying it forward. It really helps the women force to look up and say, I can do this as well. And the second part is ensuring the future is safeguarded as well by having a diverse workforce there.
No, absolutely. That was super insightful, Meenakshi, and can't agree more to you on that. Shilpa, that brings us to the next question, right? While women can play a role in creating more equity in tech, bringing in all that EQ with the IQ that Meenakshi was just referring to, what role should employers play in creating more equity in tech?
Yeah, I think that's a very good balance that we need to bring in. I think, Malini, when we have our individual role, but organizations have their role to play as well.
Mm.
So I have seen, in my career that, when we started, in my career especially, there used to be so many less of women in the, even if it's a small project team or if it is bigger teams also. I've always found myself to be, one woman and there are 10 men in the room, right? So that is kind of a situation that we have always seen. I think it is important for the organizations, and many of the organizations are embarking in terms of bringing that diversity, and inclusion, and people are targeting for 50% of diversity, and which is the right step ahead already. And all of these, goes by the policies that the organization have, right? So it's not about having only the policy, but the effectiveness of the policy implementation is very important. What kind of framework do you have in the organization which will help you to kind of understand the progress that you're making in bringing the diversity, and then how can you kind of improve that framework all the time? So that is very important. I think every organization has the ambition, but then how do we make that to a real life? That is one part of it. The secondly, I feel that they should kind of give that equal opportunity for women in all the roles, right? Sometimes we definitely see that bias coming into, and many of us must have faced it as well, right? Certain roles which could be field oriented roles, or which could be more kind of masculine roles, I would say. I mean, not really into the corporate world, but people tend to kind of go for the male candidates than the female candidates. I think women have their weaknesses in terms of their physical appearances and biological sense, but I think women also have their strengths that they bring in, right? And we'll have to look for those strengths and look for the diverse talent, not only limiting to the geography that we are into today. The world is operating global, so we are not, if we are not looking at global community, then we are losing out on a big talent, from women perspective. So I think the second point that I would like to highlight here is that the organizations will have to look globally, irrespective of their physical location of office, and then look for those talents to bring in, and then promote more people or advance more women employees into the leadership role, because they are the ones who are going to then influence whether it is going to be a diversity policy or equity policy. As someone rightly said, that 50% of world population is women, right? So there is a need for people for understanding women's need, and then give that opportunity and then encourage them to grow. So I think these are the few things that the employer can definitely do it in a much effective way. I see many doing it, but I think lot of room to improve.
Absolutely. Very well said, Shilpa. That's very insightful. Parvitam, from that, shift, to what role women could play and what role could employers play. Um, can you throw some light on what kind of biases do businesses hold about women? How do we really break them?
Sure. Interesting question, right? So see, historically it's been many, but just in the context of what we are dealing with today, we are increasingly talking about what we call the second generation bias, right? Which is nothing but there is no intent to exclude or downplay, right, women in their roles, but it just happens without anybody being aware of it or intending it. Right now, there could be many reasons. Now, it could just be the speed at which we are operating as an organization, right, coming from or leading to paucity of time, or it could oftentimes come from a place of compassion and empathy, or simply social or corporate conditioning, right? But the bottom line, the fundamental aspect is we're just not aware, and we don't have the intent to exclude or downplay. So I'll give you a very, very quick and relatable example, right? So we had this um, woman colleague who was back from her maternity, right? Adequate gap. She's come back. Her line manager, coming from a very warm place of empathy and compassion, right, designed a very lightweight role for her without even having that conversation with the employee, right? Intent was clean, but after the communication, my first response there was, hey, have we understood if this is in line with what the employee wants? And then, oh, but this is natural, right? That was an underpinning assumption that was made. And in about an hour after we had this conversation, I had the woman employee storming into my desk and say, hey, why am I given this lighter role to play? Right? I'm here ready to go full steam and ready to shoulder much bigger responsibilities. Now, why are you doing this to me? Very, very, unintentional, but these are things that we might see, right? And we might, see quite often, more often than we would desire. But that's the kind of second generation bias largely that we are dealing with in today's
Mhm.
world, with all the forces coming in to focus on diversity and inclusion, and especially promoting women talent in all across all organizations today. Now, how do we break them? I would say women take charge, right? We are oftentimes caught in the conflict that arises between a deep-rooted culture, our own identity, and the demands of the role. Be clear and take charge is what I would say. And I think Shilpa also alluded to this earlier in a way. It's just don't wait for anything that you are seeking in the world of business or corporate affairs. Don't wait for things to be offered to you on a platter. That's something that you can go after it, right? You lead the change, you be the change while the world figures this out, and then things will fall in place and the world will follow suit. But take charge is how I would summarize it, Malini.
Thanks, Pratham. Very, very relatable and normal circumstances, that you've put in, right, as an analogy over here, and that's very real to the businesses and the biases that we see. So, on that note, while we focus on the external biases, I think there is an internal bias and the blind spots, right? So, I'm going to go very quickly to Shubha. Many say that they suffer from the imposter syndrome. What are some tips that you have, that you can share to overcome that feeling? Because this is another internal bias of our own, right, of the imposter syndrome.
Yes, yes, Malini. I think that's a important topic in itself. I think many of us, when in our career journey, must have faced it as well, and some of them are able to overcome it at the earliest possible. But I would suggest, I think, a few things that comes to my mind. I think imposter symptoms. First of all, I think we need to recognize that we are, you know. Facing or feeling some kind of those symptoms. It could be more of anxiety, it could be more in terms of fear of failure, it could be more in terms of not being confident enough. Even if you are into that role and you may not be feeling confident enough to face the audience or face the problem, right? I think first step there is to recognize that there are symptoms that you're facing, and then I think it is time for us to kind of open up and then discuss some of those challenges. I think many of the women I have seen, they feel that they are alone in their professional career. That's not true, right? You are the person who are in charge of your career, but there is a support system that can help you to kind of resolve some of these issues which you may not be able to do alone. So there is a support system. We need to kind of look forward for those kind of help, and then look for mentors. And what kind of problems are you facing? If you're not feeling confident enough, look for the mentor who is done well in that area, right? It could be technology, it could be business. So look for some mentors, open up, discuss your anxieties and the issues that you are facing. And I think that that's the best thing to kind of overcome some of these challenges, because there are people who have done it on their own, and then they are here to help you. And I
Hmm.
have seen, when you open up, there are people who are willing to help, right? It is just that we have our internal stopping that actually not allows us to kind of go for help. So I would suggest these are the few things that we should not shy away from. It's not a perfect world, nobody's perfect. We should come out of that perfectionist kind of a thing, and then look for people's help, and then learn out of it, and then overcome your challenges in your own way. I mean, it could be your own way, that how do you want to overcome some of these things.
No, absolutely. Very, very relevant and pertinent, Shubha. Thanks for sharing those. And I think, like all the other panelists were saying, it's important just that we keep going and we start discussing, at all, right, in frame of references and your mentors, coaches, but don't get bogged down by it. Just build the confidence and the courage. Geeta, from there, I just want to jump into a very important question, right? How do you or how should one evaluate potential employers for inclusivity?
Yeah, I think that's a very important topic because I think the onus on women to make that intentional evaluation is really important because as we intentionally evaluate companies on their what I call inclusivity index and make our choices based on that, that'll
Mm,
keep the focus on this topic prime on mind of companies.
mm,
So what I generally advise or talk to women that that are exploring opportunities is the first question we should ask is what is the company culture like? Right?
mm,
Talk to a number of women, and I think the most important thing to a woman is when they're looking for potential employers is is if it has a good culture, a culture that's compatible to their values.
mhm,
And I think women appreciate authentic values,
mhm,
collaboration, a lot more collaborative environment,
mm,
having clarity of company's mission,
mm,
ability to look at inclusion at all levels, diverse leadership. So I would research on the company culture. The second thing I think a lot of people have already said, I think Shilpa mentioned having more people in leadership role. So we should look at how many women are in senior leadership roles
mm, mm,
because you can't be what you can't see, right? So entry and mid-level women, as they're thinking about their career paths in a company, I think if they feel that the leadership is dominated by men, women are less likely to believe that climbing that corporate ladder is worthwhile. So I think it's important to evaluate by example what are we seeing in terms of women in senior leadership roles. For me, I also look at job ads, and I've been a
mm,
part of inclusive hiring in several of my companies. And I think women look at, do the job ads speak to me? Are they inclusive? There was a time when job ads had terms like, we're looking for a rock star, or we're looking for a person who's driven sales in this way. There was also emphasis on travel and things like that. I think job ads that are more inclusive talk about a company that is making those strides too. It'd be good to look for ads that have things like flexibility, have
mm,
progressive culture mentioned in the ads, part-time roles. So to me, evaluating an ad is also one other way or a question to evaluate the potential of the company.
very important.
Uh, then there's those natural ones, right? Look at the benefits of the company. Ask the question: does the company have benefits that cater to your unique situation? And here's the question about equity and equality.
Mm,
A company may have equal benefits, but do they have equitable benefits, which means meeting you from where you're coming from, maternity leave, flex time? How does that get incorporated into the company's benefits plan? I also look for in the social media or otherwise in company websites things about internal mentoring or leadership programs. Because I think just a investment in leadership programs that a company makes shows their investment in helping women develop their leadership skills. And then lastly, I would scan social media or LinkedIn to look at stories of women succeeding at all levels in the
mm,
company. I
mm.
think if you can relate to that, are there women or minority group that is represented from previous hires that have had a strong career or are doing interesting stuff in the company? Talks about inclusivity as well.
Geeta, very, very, very important points, that you touched upon, and I think thank you for sharing those. I really hope the audience is taking notes on all of these things, and beautiful thoughts and shares, thoughts and learnings from the experiences of this panelists. So thank you all. Let's continue on. I think while we've talked about various different aspects, biases, or what is the imposter syndrome, to how do we select the employers, and how do we go about it. Geeta, what's that one piece of advice you have for those that are just starting their careers?
Yeah, it's difficult to crystal into one piece. If I can have two or three, I want to kind of bring it home to what a lot of women on this panel have said, and I think a lot of us will relate to. I started my career at the time when women in tech were a rarity. I came from a background that was not a tech background, so that even put extra pressure on me to stand out and prove myself. So, one thing that I did, which I think I've still carried with me, is that I focused on substance. I focused on what is that one thing that is going to define me and my brand, right? And that was because, if you're a minority, you have to work harder to prove yourself. So I would say it is good to focus on substance,
Mhm.
and you know, um, as far as style is concerned, which is also important when you're in all man's world, that should be whatever suits you best, because nobody can challenge you if you have a brand and you have focused on substance. I think there's another thing that Shilpa said. So this was not originally what I was thinking. Is that people will judge you. I think I was in that situation where I tried to be the guy in the room, right? Because you wanted to be the majority and act like that. And I'm talking late 1980s and early 1990s. Uh, to a younger self, I would say be authentic. You really don't have to be the guy in the room. Yeah, I mean, you are good as you are, and confident. So be authentic to yourself and with other women. And lastly, again, this is more from experience, that explore your options and don't be in a hurry. I think again, Shilpa said that your journey is a long career. And I think looking back, if I would change something in my career, was I was very intense. I was focused, like I need to get this done. But that intensity was, looking back, unnecessary, because I would have reached this point or done maybe some orthogonal things and then still arrived at where I needed to. So that journey would have been important. And I think I may have missed out on having fun in the while I was trying to focus on my career. So that would be good to explore your path, your options, and do not be in a hurry, because this time you will get there.
No, very very well said, right? And yeah, it's time to be authentic. Super important. Thanks, Geeta, for sharing that. I'm just going to request the audience to start posting in any questions if you want. As they come in, we will start picking in. I can see a few, but if you have more, just keep posting them, and we'll start picking them one by one. I'm just going to move on, with some of the questions that the audience have asked. One of them, I think I'm going to point that back to Shilpa, very relevant to what Jaskita, gave us an advice for starting the careers. With the whole rapid development of the digital and the scientific fields and the skills, needed to thrive in them, how can the junior women in STEM future-proof their careers?
That's a very interesting question, Malini. And while you asked about it, I'm thinking of my future-proofing my career too. So it's relevant across, like whether young or older women like us. But um, so what does really the future look like? Now we have more and more uh, run-the-mill mundane jobs getting done automated, right? Either robotics or AI. Chat GPT is the latest. I mean, you don't need to even Google now, right? You just ask the question, you'll get it in Chat GPT. So how do you add value and continue to add value over the span of your career in whatever role you are doing, right? And I'm borrowing a acronym that I read somewhere recently.
Mm-hmm.
To future proof your career, stay
Mm-hmm.
real, right? Real, it's an acronym. R stands for relevant, stay relevant. uh, E stands for embrace. A stands for adapt. Embrace and adapt what? Change. And leverage your skills, leverage your experience to boost your career, to get more out of less. As because there is only so much time in a day, there is only so much time in a week. So you got to figure out a way to maximize, and wherever is the best benefit of that hour that you put, that's where you invest your career in. So with that as a thought process, to be able to stay relevant, what do one need to do? So uh, something that I have followed through my career is, can we continuously do some learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be academic, it could be some vocation, something on the job, but keep looking for some flavor that keeps adding to your role and to your experience, right? Because you never know when the opportunity is going to strike, right? it will never give you a notice, right? So be ready, right, when that opportunity comes. So what I do is I look around what other, my seniors are doing in their career, try to follow that path, right? Or I will look around what my peers or my friends who are also in industry, what they are doing. Okay, can I do something of that, right? And there is no real good or bad timing for education. When you think it's needed, you just go ahead and get that done. Now, the good part is, for the same reason, advancement of technology, you have so many options online, right? So for younger women, I'll say, okay, don't even wait. I mean, a generation like me, we are not that tech savvy. I'm trying to be there, get there, right? Be with the younger generation. But uh, there are so many online interactive learning tools, right? You don't have to really register for a university or a physical education. Make use of that.
Mm.
There are so many simulations and real like classroom type experiences available. Make use of that and get as close to the practical experience that one may have, right? So that gives you the confidence when that situation happens. How do you deal with it? Now, coming to embrace and adapt, it's true in general that, I mean, all of us have to be open the disruption that technology is bringing everywhere. But more so for ladies, I would say, and I love Indriya Nui, the way she has explained her own journey, and I'm just quoting a few things from there. So between the age of 25 to 35, right, the women's biological clock and the corporate clock, it's completely in the reverse direction, right? So you're going through on the personal front, there is a marriage, then there are new relationships entering your life, then there is a pregnancy, then there is a child care and the additional responsibilities that come through that, right? And that's exactly the time where you have to compete and be competitive on the corporate front also. So how do you really balance that, right? So typically what I have seen for my generation, and I hope that doesn't happen for the next generation, is many times ladies tend to settle in for less challenging workplace, right? Give more importance to personal life, right? And stick to the same role for a longer time. And that's exactly where the whole complacency and the being ready becomes it starts impacting. So
Mm.
my suggestion, my request to the younger lot who's joining here today is, please give equal importance to the work and career. When it's a long haul, like Geeta said very aptly, right? It's a long haul. It's a journey. So sooner or later you will get there. There will be, you have to balance, adapt, and change yourself in the changing circumstance. That's the only way to uh, make yourself happy. At the end of the day, that's what is important.
Thanks, Shilpa. I think be real, right? That's the key message out of this. I'm going to quickly read some of the questions again, from the chat. And so one of the questions that we've got is: are the results of Virtusa Engineering Equity Hackathon 2023 released? I must say that we had over 67,000 plus all-inclusive women registrations, for this hackathon. We are now the hackathon challenge is kicking off, with in the next couple of hours with our top 100 finalists. So we're super excited, about it. The numbers were really, really great. We were blown away by it. So I looks like this is the beginning, right? With all inclusive, 67,000 plus, hackathon. Go girls, go girl. The world is out there for you to get it. The next question, that I see is um, how to deal with people problem. Most times, the technical problem, is easier than the people problem, and I can totally relate it. And probably I'm going to go to Minakshi. Do you want to take a stab at it, and also, share, how the attributes of I mean, your leadership, journey, and what advice, would you give in relation to this context? And it's a fabulous question.
And it's a small question, but it is so power packed, right? Technical problems are so easy. You can test it and figure out and solve it by yourself. Human beings are very complex, right? And we come up with various size, shapes, and thought processes and complexities of personalities. And in our workforce, we have that kind of a diversity. Be it men, be it women, be it whatever ethnicity and generation we come up with, there is complexities. I think what's worked with me is active listening. That is one, on really listening to someone with a true intent of what they are saying, not clouding my judgment when I'm speaking or when I'm hearing something about who this person is, what the perspective is, but really hearing them is one thing that helps me. Um, Taking off a few of the prejudices that we have, right? For example, if a man with a gray hair comes in, you have a certain thing, certain prejudice in your mind as to who this is going to be, and they would have so much experience and so on and so forth, and your biases start kicking in. So taking off those prejudices that you have, and not interrupting people, and really understanding what the intent is helps us. Most of the times what happens is in conflicts. One is we stop asking questions, we stop trying to understand the perspective of how where the person is coming from, and that is where then you lose out on that discussion as well, or you lose out what that intent is. So being very authentic, giving the person a chance, gets everywhere. I'd also like to draw our attention towards the pandemic space as to how all of our organizations got so empathetic. I mean, we just moved from focusing on revenues and productivity to how do we help people, right? And that's the benefit of being human beings and not just being AI. So people, it is difficult, but yes, it is who we are, and we can deal with each other.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I'm gonna go, to the next, question that's there, right? And probably Parvatam, you can throw some light on it because it's more around the self advocacy part of it, right? As you start your, career, with a lot of personal struggles and so on, how can really, women build in that courage and as a fresher, they start with years of struggle in their personal, life and probably, fail multiple attempts. What would be your advice to them? Yeah, probably anybody in the panel want to take a stab at it.
Yeah, I can take
Yeah.
a stab at it a little bit. So I think because the question was about coming back to work with some struggle in your personal life, I think it's really important as women to be there for women. So I have two pieces of advice. One, I think we are not always very active as women in creating that social network. I think it is okay to very visibly support women. I mean, at the end of the day, we've had 30 years or 40 or however many years of male dominance in this sector. So it is okay. Let's bring the equity in and support women. But as coming in, I think it's important to develop critical allies, mentors, and sponsors. And each of them play an important role as you're coming back to work. Like allies are generally from the majority group. So they're generally from, either a male can be an ally, and they're the ones who've actively aligned and chosen to represent the underrepresented group. So having an ally that helps you would be a great idea. Having mentors that advise and guide you specifically to your situation, and then having sponsors that will actively fight for you, making sure that you are engaging and getting that network done. I have a personal story that I think I really related with when I think Subhaya talked about when talking about designing a lightweight role. I remember when I went back from maternity leave, and at that time, maternity leave in the US was only 8 weeks. So I was going back, and my boss actually told me that I wouldn't report into her, and I had two women bosses. I would report into my boss's boss with an expanded role, and that was completely contrary to what a normal reaction would be. You're coming back from maternity leave to smaller stuff. It's because I had a sponsor over there, and she actively fought for the fact that not only can I come back, but I can take a bigger role. So I came from a personal situation, similar, like tough work, having a child at home, and she not only fought for that, but also built the confidence in me to take that role. So it's a little bit of a contrast of how people can assume things for you, and how sometimes the sponsors will build that confidence and take you through that journey.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Shubha, just on that note, one last, bit, how do we really uplift women? I know Geeta touched upon some of the, allies and mentorship, etc. But you were to say something, so we can probably, take that last, bit of advice coming in from you, and then we can wrap it up.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Malini. In terms of, I think, uplifting women, I would say there are two parts to it. One is actually, you being self motivated and self driving. I think we all need to have that fire within ourselves to kind of aspire for more than what we could do, and aspire for, have those ambitions to kind of look forward to. And without that, I think there is no push in the world which is going to kind of take you there, right? So the first thing, my advice is, you should have that ambition and fire within yourself. The second thing is, I think, more in terms of be curious to know, whether it is on the job learning, whether you are learning from the network that you have built in, or from the experiences around, and go and ask for help, right? So be curious. It may not be relevant for your current job, it might be relevant for your future jobs. You never know. It has so many times happened to me that I've learned certain things but which is not relevant to me now, but when I get into the different kind of a role, it has always helped me, right? So always venture into areas, not limit yourself into a comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone and then try new things. It may not be relevant today, but definitely will add to your advantage in future. A third thing, I think I would advise people to kind of motivate others to do it. It's you and your team in the professional career who has to kind of go along. It's not about you alone, right? So it's the team that you will have to take along. So motivate more and more people, encourage more and more people to kind of get along this journey, and you will build more of your community of women in tech, which is going to be a support system for you to go along long way, right? Those will be my comments, Malini.
No, thanks, Shilpa. And I think it's super important. I think we all need to be allies and we all need to be supporting each other. And that's the only way that we can achieve, that the only way that we can embrace each other, right? And bring a equitable world, for each one of us. So that brings us, to the end of this session. Parvatam, Shilpa, Geeta, Minakshi, and Shubha, absolute pleasure to have had you today in this discussion. Thank you so much for sharing such beautiful insights through your experiences. I just want to wrap it up with one important message, that it is just not enough to embrace equity. I think we all definitely need to strive to engineer it too. So thank you all. Have a lovely day, and happy International Women's Day once again.
Thank
Thank you,
you.